Yo, what's up guys? Imagine Create Destroy here. In today's video, I'm going to be using this World War II Japanese Navy boat set to make my first ever diorama using resin. But before we get started, just wanted to thank everyone for watching my last video. It really does mean a lot to me, guys. Alright, let's get started here. After I have not so thoroughly read the instructions, we'll go ahead and throw them to the side and get started cutting the boats from the sprues. I'm not sure if this set was confusing because I only looked at the pictures to put the boats together, or because it was just confusing, but it really didn't make any sense, so I mostly just winged it here. Also, there were some pieces I couldn't even find, like the anchor that goes on the front of the boat, or the bow, a term that I definitely didn't Google just now. But it's okay, it's so small you won't even be able to tell it's missing. Well, you'll be able to tell because I just told you, but no one else will ever know. Now that all the pieces of the boat are cut out, I'll glue them together with some plastic glue. And I'll just make sure and give everything a nice press here so that the glue can melt the two plastics together and everything fits together nicely. For only using the pictures on the instructions of the boats, I think the boats came out pretty boat-like. Now that I've finished up the boats, I'll move on to the creature I'm going to use for this build. This creature, like every other creature I've used, is courtesy of my local D&D store, which at this point, I've spent enough money there for the owner to probably support a family. But anyway, I'll go ahead and prime him off camera, or her, with the boats. Here I just glued the sea creature and the boats to some balsa wood sticks, and then I glued them to some bases just to make them easier to paint. While I set up my extremely expensive paint booth and my really cheap airbrush, y'all can enjoy this nice butt shot before I base my minis. For the base coat on the boats, I start with the base of blue-gray, or gray-blue depending on your outlook on life I guess. Then just painted the decks with the light tan and the canopies of the other boats with the white. I'm going to skip any washes because I like to imagine little 1/350th scale guys forced to clean the boats all the time. Alright, now that the boats are finished up, I'll take them off the bases, set them aside, and we'll get to work on the mini that I'm most excited to paint for this project. The sea creature gets a base of dark sea green, followed by a lizard green, then an ice yellow for the final highlights. Lastly, I use Zendari dust for the teeth. While I finish up the painting, we can get started on the backstory for this project. These Japanese utility boats are bringing supplies to a small kamikaze outpost on a tiny island close to the Philippines. They were preparing an attack on American bases on the string of islands post Pearl Harbor. The boat captains had heard whispers of a giant shadow moving extremely fast under the choppy waters, when scouting pilots were planning their attack on the bases. Needless to say, the captains were on edge while sailing to the island. But orders took priority over nerves, so they had no choice but to risk their lives for the mission. Little did they know, this would be their last time sailing these waters. Moving on to the most nerve-wracking part of this build, the resin pour. I've heard horror stories of things going wrong for many people mixing and pouring resin. But to make things a little easier, I got this silicone mold on Amazon, so at least nothing will leak. But hey, I could still mess up mixing the resin, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. After I'm done playing with my wood, putting my wood in place, putting this wood together, I'll line up my minis just to get an idea of where I want everything. Okay, now that I'm done making immature wood jokes, I'm going to get started on making supports for the boats of the miniatures. When I pour the resin, I don't want anything moving around, so I'm going to use balsa wood of varying thicknesses, hot glue them together, and then I'll glue the minis on some balsa wood sticks, and I'll glue it to the supports, just so everything stays in place while I pour the resin. You might be thinking now, you really over-explained that. Well, I am a man. Sometimes I get an overwhelming urge to mansplain things, so just deal with it, alright? Alright, now I'll just fill up the mold with some water so I don't make too much resin, or more importantly, not enough resin. Then I'll measure the water, put the bracing system I made in place, and we'll get started on mixing the resin. I'm using a cheap deep pour resin from Amazon. I did want to buy a higher quality resin, but that's just expensive. And I'm poor, so we'll just use the cheap stuff and hope it looks good. When I poured into the pitcher, I made sure and poured the resin and the hardener down the sides just to reduce any air bubbles. Then I used alcohol inks to get a nice blue color to kind of simulate the seawater. I didn't use too much so I could still see the sea creature and still get that nice blue water effect. Then I stirred it up real slow just to reduce any air bubbles once again. I want to make sure this is as clear as possible for the end results. Put some popsicle sticks down so I can reduce the air bubbles, which I've said a lot already, but I really don't want to see a single one in this resin pour. Then I'll pop the rest with my blowtorch and we'll let this sit for a few days to cure. After I took off the bracing thing I made, I demolded the piece and took a second to see if there were any air bubbles, which I wouldn't have been able to do anything about really. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't too many, which to my surprise, there was actually none. Now for the last step, I used an old paintbrush to put on some gloss Mod Podge, then used my airbrush to make it look like water ripples. Then I called this diorama done. Now let's get into the beauty shots.
Look, back and I'm better than ever. I think I got a vendetta. Oh, now they call me, I seen them. All of those times getting severed. I told them all I can let up. They get not tired of me never. Give me a shot and I swear I shoot like Berettas. Yeah. They getting nervous, I seen it. What I seen, you wouldn't believe it. They said they wanted, I need it. Damn, I'm going dumb like I dropped out of class. Get in my lane and I'm going right past. I turn it up, watch me go to the max. You ain't at first and you know that you last. I thought I told them I'm coming right back. I got a flows like it came from the tap, and I came from my city, that's right on my back. Oof. Back and I'm better than ever. I think I got a vendetta. Oh, now they call me, I seen them. All of those times getting severed.
Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you everybody for watching. Y'all have a great day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.
I swear I shoot like Berettas. Back and I'm better than ever. I think I got a vendetta. Oh, now they call me, I seen them. All of those times getting severed. I told them all I can let up. They get not tired of me never. Give me a shot and I swear I shoot like Berettas. That's how I shoot. Lately I'm driven like I'm on the road. They in my lane, dog, I told them to move. Now that I'm popping, got too much to lose. Look at the numbers, got nothing to prove. I'm in the city, just me and my crew. Told me I'm sick and I know that it's true, but I'm still gonna ball, it's like I got a flu. Yeah, run it up, I told them that I'm coming back. So let me get all of that. Time is now, I'm coming around to get a check.